If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their lives will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. Good morning. Welcome to a short biblical reflection on the passage from the Gospel according to Mark chapter 8 verses 27 up to 38, that includes the confession of faith of Peter concerning Jesus, his identity, and the first prediction of the Passion, followed by the consequences, cost of discipleship. This reading has three parts. The first part, verses 27 up to 30, is the story at Caesarea Philippi with this double question that Jesus addresses to the disciples. Who do people say that I am? And then the disciples answer that people think that he's John the Baptist, others that he's Elijah, or still others that he's one of the prophets. And then direct question to the disciples, but who do you say that I am? And Peter answers in the name on their behalf, you are the Messiah. Then follows the announcement of death and his passion in verses 31 up to 33, and with the reaction of Peter, who took him aside and started to rebuke him, and then what Jesus did, turning and looking at disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." And then from verse 34 follows the beginning of the cost of the discipleship with the words which I quoted already at the beginning. If anyone want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. These words are addressed not only to the close disciples, but to all the crowds. Our reading from the Gospel according to Mark has parallel texts also in other Synoptic Gospels, in Matthew chapter 16 and Luke chapter 9. Let's look briefly at the Synoptic comparison, how the first part, the profession of faith of St. Peter, is presented in all these three Gospels. As you can see now on the screen, the reading in Matthew is larger because Matthew also, after Peter making the statement in the Gospel according to Matthew, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, then Jesus explains to Peter that what he now stated he could not reach by his own force, but it is the gift that he received in the words, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven." Such explanation we do not find in the Gospel according to Mark, neither in the Gospel according to Luke. Now, concerning the second and the third part, that is the prediction of Jesus and subsequently the cost of discipleship, they are quite similar in Matthew and Mark, but the Lucan Gospel is different because it does not include this element of reaction of Peter, who rebuked Jesus, and then consequently Jesus, who is rebuking Peter and making this very strong statement that Peter is not thinking according to divine standard, but according to human standard. From this comparison, we can say that Markan Gospel is somehow in the middle, not only physically as put here in this chart or synoptically in the order in the Gospels. Lucan Gospel is not interested with the figure of Peter in this story at all, only that he makes the statement of profession of faith and that's it. While in Matthew's Gospel, it presents his up and down. His up when Jesus explains that he received the revelation from the Father, and then he's down when Jesus has to react and call him Satan because he's thinking only humanly, not according to divine standard. While Markan Gospel is not interested with this up of Peter, only with this profession when he says, "You are the Messiah." And then very strongly now we can say this accent and misunderstanding on Peter, on his human thinking, therefore also consequently the subsequent consequences which are presented to the disciples sound more strongly, I would say, than comparing it with the Gospel according to Matthew. Being enlightened a little bit by the synoptic comparison, we can look now more closely at the flow of the story as it is presented by Mark. Firstly, we have this profession of faith with this strong statement of Peter on behalf of all the disciples, "You are the Messiah." Then the down of Peter when he reacts at the words of Jesus that he has to suffer death, but Peter even rebukes Jesus, his master. So he even dare to make such a reaction, and consequently Jesus had to rebuke Peter and telling him, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." And then the words which are addressed to the crowds together with his disciples, because Jesus called them in verse 34, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." From this perspective, these words, yes, they are addressed to all of them, but in particular, they are addressed to Peter, because Peter has to change his mind, not looking at Jesus only as a human person whom he doesn't want to lose because it is good for him. He likes to be with Jesus. He enjoys his company, seeing the miracles, hearing his teaching, and so on. He has now to take this courage to lose Jesus and even to follow his footsteps and to take his own cross. And as the course of the gospel shows us, Peter had to grow to this point gradually. He even at certain moment denied Jesus but repented. And the story of his life shows that he grew to this point because he was able to offer his own life for the sake of Jesus, for the sake of his gospel. I would like to wish you a nice day, a nice reflection on this passage of the gospel.